Welcome inside edition number 73 of the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in my own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat podcast. I would be your host, Ross Brendel. In just moments, I'll be joined by the co-owner of Bring Me the News, Mr. Joe Nelson. You can find him on Twitter at Joe BMTN. And of course, you can find Bring Me the News at bringmethenews.com. Before we segue into Joe, a very brief reminder to rate and review Minnesota Sports Chat on Apple. And no matter how you are listening, whether that be on Spotify, iHeartRadio, PodMN, any one of those cool apps I don't even know exist, please tell your friends and family all about Minnesota Sports Chat. Thank you for the comments on Twitter. Again, you can find me at Brendel Ross. And routinely, I receive a couple of emails a week at minnesotasportschat@gmail.com. I appreciate the kind words and the inquiries, so thank you very much for that. Keep them coming. Without further ado, Mr. Joe Nelson, the co-owner at Bring Me the News. Joe, how are you? And thank you for doing this.
I'm good, Ross. This is long overdue. I know that.
No worries on that, my man. Life. We are all insanely busy. I know that just as well as the next guy. Okay, Joe, let's hop right into it. This is an honest question, okay? I'm not trolling here. Yeah. I'm not trying to get Vikings fans going as we're
That's easy to do.
As we're about 51 hours from kickoff in Cincinnati as we record this on the morning of Friday, September 10th. Is it better for you at Bring Me the News for the Vikings to be good to pretty good, or just bad? What creates more traffic for you?
Any kind of drama, conspiracy, vaccination stuff, you know how it is. You never want to be the gray zone. You never want to go 8-8 or now, 9-8 or whatever the record might be in a 17-game season. You want to be really bad or competing for a playoff spot. But I think, in general, at the beginning of the season, good or bad is definitely interesting. The users will get all over it, but then you go through that middle of the season, people will fade away and just kind of run with the motions. But at the end of the season, if they're bad, nobody gives a crap. If they're good, people click. You see it with the Twins every single season. It's no different. It doesn't matter the team. People will fall into that trap of either bliss or complete destruction. If the Vikings are bad, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Even if they're middle of the road, nobody cares. People stop clicking.
What's going to be tougher for you, my man? Getting used to saying Huntington Bank Stadium or trying to remember that it's now a 17-game season and not a 16-game season when you're doing those record predictions?
Oh, man, 17 games, 100%. I'm 38 years old. Am I 38? Am I 30? I'm almost 38. I'm almost 38 years old, and I've never experienced a 17-game NFL season. So week 18, that's completely foreign. Stadium changes, that's run of the mill too. So we'll get used to that real fast.
So years ago, when the college football quote unquote playoff, they decided to go from 2 to 4. I said, well, it's only a matter of time before they go to 8, and eventually it'll be at 16. Sounds like they're actually going to go to 12. So then maybe it'll go to 16, 24 after that. It's only going to keep expanding, right? The writing's on the wall. The NFL season is going to go to 18 games at some point, right? They're going to boot that third preseason game, and down the road, whether it's 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, we're going to have an 18-game schedule. It just seems inevitable at this point.
I would agree. I mean, there's so much money going around that they're going to want to maximize that possibility, because preseason games only generate so much. I know, the tickets there and everything's the same price, parking's the same thing and everything, but these owners want to maximize the dollar. This is a business, and you're not filling the stadiums for most of these preseason games like you are in a regular season game. You're not getting the tailgating. Every aspect of a regular season game over a preseason game, TV money, everything. It all screams, yes, we're eliminating another preseason game and we're going straight to 18 games. Obviously, the Players Union has a lot to say about that, and there will be some steps to go through. But with the money there, eventually, some injury protections, extra bye weeks, I think it'll happen for sure. Yeah.
So, Joe, you spent time at KFAN, and I know I just missed you by mere months
Yeah.
looking at our timelines. And obviously, you have been in and around involved in sports media in this state for the longest time now. For a while, I used to shy away from the question of either A, can we have nice things, or just the opinion that we can't have nice things. And now even I'm starting to fall into that trap. Why can't we have nice things? I have a long standing theory. Two of them. One I stole from my friend. One of my
Let's hear
friends
it.
believes it's the curse of Norm Green. Nothing good has happened since Norm Green picked up the Stars and went down to Dallas.
Okay.
My other theory is the water is bad because of 3M, and it ruins all the athletes.
Well, that's actually true, namely in that Maplewood area. But I don't know, man. We
What
can't
is in
have
the air?
anything nice. I don't know, but we're sitting on a ticking time bomb with the Vikings, because right now that roster is nice, right? It's a nice roster. We like the starting depth. Not the starting depth. We like the starters. The depth on this team is absolutely garbage. Yes. Mike Zimmer's talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. We're sitting on a ticking time bomb of losing more nice things. It's the NFL. Guys are going to get hurt. If they stay healthy all season long, they could be really good. But yeah, I think we're just sitting on that bomb to go off, waiting for that to happen. Like we're in designated survivor, and the White House is about to be, the U.S. Capitol is about to be blown up. Where's Kiefer Sutherland when we need him? Abraham going down, that absolutely stinks. Even the positive things that happen in this world hurt Minnesota sports. Look at Maya Moore. She gets a guy out of prison who is wrongfully convicted, and her WNBA career is essentially over. The Lynx lose maybe the greatest player in the history of the game. We just cannot have anything nice. I don't know what it is, but it's the obvious is that it's Minnesota, and this market is not attractive. The climate is not attractive to a lot of the big name players, but you're right. Even when we get them, they don't last long.
Well, and the part that I've always found interesting, Joe, is for the most part, because of the money in the NFL, almost any team can attract free agents. Even look at the Cleveland Browns and Buffalo Bills in recent years. So the NFL seems to be the one that can survive that. The Wild to a degree, because it's such a hockey rich community, but the Twins and Timberwolves, they can typically keep guys here, but it's only after they trade for them. Like they have to get them here against their will, and then they see how nice it is, and then they'll stay, but nobody willingly comes here. And that's the part that always cracks me up. This is a great place to live. It's almost like we need a PSA that gets sent to all the athletes in the now 5 major sports, if you're including soccer in this country. I think you have to let people know this is a great place to live. You don't have to be terrified of coming here.
Well, where else is a great place to live? Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but nobody gives a damn. There's a lot of great places to live in the United States. It's the United States. I'm sure Montana's beautiful, but people don't want to be there for more than 3 days. So it doesn't happen that way. People want to be in LA. They want to be in Miami. Look at Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lord, the new owners of the Timberwolves, or, soon to be full majority owners of the Timberwolves. I saw they had a team picture with all the players, minus Anthony Edwards. He apparently had some stuff going on, according to Doogie. But the whole team, a bunch of the staff, they were all hanging out with A-Rod and Mark Lord. And I'm like, oh my God, A-Rod's in Minnesota. He's really adopting to this thing. No, turns out they were at A-Rod's house in Miami. They don't even want to be here for their own team to get together for a big meeting. It's Miami. They're not going to come here to party. The limelight that exists in all of these other massive markets does not exist here in the Twin Cities.
Percent chance. I'll give you my take and then you can follow up. Percent chance within the next 10 years, the Minnesota Timberwolves no longer call Minneapolis home. I think it's a good chance. I still don't think it's a great chance, because I think there's a couple factors in play here. I think the NBA would rather just bring a team back to Seattle and have another team. I think they'd rather just expand into a few markets. Look, Minnesota's not a huge market, but it's still in the top half of NBA teams. I don't think they want to lose that market. For some reason, we always think the Wolves are the 28th best market in the NBA. That's not true. They're just typically the 28th best team. That's
No,
not
you're
true at
right.
all. Yeah, if they're lucky, they're the 28th best team. So
That's
so
a good year.
I also think that A-Rod, Mark Lowry might think a couple years down the road it'll be easy to move the team. I'm not sure how easy it will be to get out of Target Center. I do think they're saying all the right things right now, but I do think the inevitable plan is 3 to 5 years from now, they're going to float the, boy, we really need a new arena. We know you put money into this. Then at that point, it might become easier to leave. But I still think there's a lot of factors in play that make it harder to leave than maybe they think it is. But I still think the odds are probably, well, I wouldn't say odds, percentages. I don't know. Is it as high as 30% that they're not here in a decade?
That's a really tough one to put an estimate on. I think it's, you know, the pessimist in me and probably a lot of Timberwolves fans would say it's, at least 30%. I mean, you're looking at it and you say, A-Rod we just talked about it. These guys don't want anything to do with Minnesota, right? So where would they bring a team? I don't think Seattle's necessarily that much better of a market than Minneapolis, St. Paul. A-Rod has connections there, but I doubt that has much to do with anything. You know, Seattle's already had a failing basketball team. You look at that. Kevin Durant and company went to Oklahoma City. So it's not like Seattle's track record for basketball is better than Minnesota's. There's other markets out there that, Vegas and whatnot, that would maybe be a lot more attractive than most places in the country, especially with the way daily fantasy sports and sports betting is booming. I mean, you look at around the NFL now, and there are stadiums that have sports books in them. Look at Arizona right now. That can't happen in Minnesota right now due to legislative laws, but it's huge. You put a team in Las Vegas, and all of a sudden you're a marquee team, no matter what. It's more attractive. But I think another thing that's going to convince or influence at least A-Rod and company in their decision will be how good they can be in Minnesota. Because right now, I mean, you look at the Bovada odds, and Ben Simmons is outside of staying in Philadelphia. Minnesota is the favored landing spot if he gets traded before the start of the season. It's like plus 300 right now. Damian Lillard just said, "Hey, I'm staying in Portland." I mean, there's not a lot of attractive trade options for a guy like Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers to partner with. So you bring in Ben Simmons, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a bit of a rock star basketball team if they can stay healthy and figure out a way to play together. So if the Wolves are good, that also fills the seats, brings basketball back to that epicenter of the early 2000s and during the Flip and KG eras. And they're not going to want to move the team if they have a successful product here in Minnesota. Do they need a new arena to keep up with the rest of the league? That might be true. But if you're winning and making money and you actually create a little bit of trust that this would be a sustainable, good product like the Vikings are in the state, you might convince some people who have some power to help get that move or stadium created. It's hard to do, obviously, but it's hard to do in any market.
Nobody's been more critical of the Timberwolves. Well, I think a lot of people have, but I've been just as critical as pretty much anybody. And nobody's been as critical on the NBA as me. At times, and I'm going to walk to the other side of this too, but at times in recent years, I've called the NBA a Ponzi scheme. It's basically a traveling road show for the 4 teams that are going to be in their conference finals every year, so they can beat up on everybody else and make money, while the other 26 teams really have no chance to do anything. Now, on the flip side to that, I would say there have been teams in the last few years that have shown the model for a team like Minnesota. You can win the NBA finals. It's tough. It's a lot tougher, but it can be done. For the longest time, the NBA had, I think the number was 9 or 10 different champions in 38 years. So basically 2/3 of the league couldn't win. It was the same teams all the time. Well, now in the last 5 years, you've seen Toronto and Milwaukee win championships. Milwaukee's done it a little bit more homegrown, which has always been the way I said that the Timberwolves need to do it. It's exactly how the Spurs did it. People always think the Spurs are this huge market. They were never a huge market or a destination for people to go to until they landed Tim Duncan with David Robinson. Toronto did it the other way. Toronto looked at their roster and said, boy, we have a pretty good chance to win this thing, but we need a superstar player. And even if we know that superstar player is going to leave after a year, we're going to shoot our shot. and it worked for them. So I actually do believe, I always said the Timberwolves will never win an NBA championship. I'm not saying they're going to, but I actually now, for the first time in a long time, will concede that they can do it. But now it goes back to some of the things that you talked about. How do they turn a team? Joe, I graduated high school in 2005. Okay.
Mhm.
For lack of a better term, or lack of a better way of putting it, the year the Wolves were the 8th seed, if you don't even count that, which I mean, you have to, but just throw it out, they haven't been relevant since 2004. I can't tell you how
Right.
much has changed in my life since the Wolves were last relevant, in your life since the Wolves were last relevant. And this is a league where half the teams make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's
So
embarrassing.
yeah, so how do they fix that? How do they become a team that can at least start appearing in the playoffs and giving you that hope that, okay, maybe they can get things right? I think they do have the foundation right now, but I also, from afar, Joe, I can see eventually there might be some push and pull between Towns and Ant Edwards. Can you have two guys that want to be team leaders trying to lead a team? Can you have two dominant personalities leading a team? I don't know if you can.
I don't think you can win a championship if Karl Anthony Towns is your alpha and your go-to. I just think that's proven in the NBA. You got to have some really elite guard and wing play. Your big men are complementary in this day and age. It's not a Shaq league anymore. It's not a Hakeem Olajuwon league anymore. Karl can do a lot of things all over the floor, but Anthony Edwards and what he's able to do is a lot closer to this is going to sound crazy, obviously, a lot closer to a LeBron-like comparison than Karl is. You know, Cat is he's a fantastic player, but he's closer to Kevin Love than he is to anybody else. You know, he is a bit of a big box scorer. His leadership is very questionable. He's obviously highly emotional. Is he a stable leader who's going to go out there and get it done and go Giannis on the bit and just focus 100% on dominating? I don't think so. He seems to really like the outside basketball spotlight as well. A lot of players do, but do those players win championships all the time? I don't think so. I mean, LeBron is so damn good that he just does it. Like Dwayne Wade, yeah, he's in commercials and everything, but these guys are just dogs. You know, I'm not sure Karl has the ability to be a dog. So to answer your question, can they mesh? Yeah, they can mesh if Cat takes a back seat. If Cat doesn't take a back seat, this team's forever going to be terrible. I think Cat's future with the Wolves is a lot more bleak than Anthony Edwards is. You know, and if it's true that Anthony Edwards grew 2 more inches and he's now 6'6" without shoes on, may God have mercy on the rest of the NBA because we know he's going to be an absolute superstar. Everybody knows that. So it's all about loyalty. You got to have loyalty in a market like this. Ant Edwards can't leave. He has to stay here and have the team built around him and lead them to a championship or at least into relevance. That's
Yeah,
the only way.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joe. I've had conversations on this podcast and just with people personally that at some point, Cat's going to have to be a big enough man to take that back seat and basically in his head know that he's the number two. And I just don't know how somebody who has been the number one for 5 to 8 years at that point can decide that they're okay with being the number two. I think that's going to be very interesting to follow and see what happens. I am with you. I think the odds are fairly high that in a couple of years he's playing for a different team, but all that will play out. It's just fun to have a lot of stuff to talk about with the Timberwolves, and albeit there's a lot of question marks, it feels for the first time in a few years that it's not all super negative. So I'm looking forward to the upcoming season and just seeing what happens with this roster and further coming together under Chris Finch. Obviously, they didn't make a ton of offseason moves. Maybe there's still a Ben Simmons shoe to drop or a backup move. We'll see, but time will tell on that. Joe, I want to ask you 2 football questions that I want to have some fun with you in closing.
Let's do it.
Let's circle back to the Vikings. So my thought on the Vikings is I think just like every year, because of the quarterback and because of the roster and some things that you talked about early on, it's a good starting roster. Depth is very questionable at this point. I know earlier this week, Coach Zimmer talked about well, hopefully we have time to coach these guys up. So when they have to play, because it's the NFL, we know they're going to have to play, that they're ready to play. So I look at the team for a lot of the reasons that you said. And I think, okay, they're going to at least win 7 or 8 games. But on the high end, because of roster limitations, I don't really see them winning any more than 10 or 11 games, which always goes back to the problem of being caught in the middle is one of the worst places to be. And I think that's exactly where the Vikings are, unless they get some breaks to go their way. Do you have any grandiose Vikings opinions or thoughts on the upcoming season? I think they're going to wind up being what they've always been. And I'm not putting it all on Kirk Cousins, but the evidence suggests they'll be an 8-9, 9-8 team. And I really see no reason to think that they'll be much better than 10 and 11 wins or much worse than 7 or 8.
I'm 100% where you are. I looked at the schedule this morning. I figured this might be a question, and I was thinking, oh God, 10-7 at best. 10-7 at best. I mean, if you just look at it, I feel good about this week in Cincinnati. I don't feel good about going to Arizona in week number 2. The number of pass rushers this team is going to face with Rashad Hill at left tackle or a rookie Christian Darrisaw is goddamn frightening. Yes. I mean, you look at Arizona and you're like, oh, they're not known for elite defense. Well, they have J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones now. So those guys are going to put a ton of pressure on Kirk Cousins. Then you go into week 4, you got to deal with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, this is not an easy road. I really do think the Vikings will get off to a good start, maybe 5-2, hell, even 6-1. But you know how it looks after the bye week.
Yeah.
They get Dallas and then just a host of studs. This is not going to be easy. And by that time in the season, there's going to be a lot of injuries, most likely. And if you're not healthy with the depth this team has, it's going to be bad. Plus, age is a bit of a factor, too. Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, Adam Thielen. Yeah, Breland, too. I mean, if Thielen goes down, all of a sudden, all the pressure on the world is on Justin Jefferson. Otherwise, you better hope KJ Osborne or D.D. Westbrook are the next Jesus Football Christ, because it won't be good. So you're an injury or two away at a number of positions where just the bleep hits the fan. And in a 17-game season, I don't know if you noticed, that's actually longer than a 16-game season where depth is already paramount. So you got to go longer and be healthier than ever before. And this team arguably has the least depth in the entire NFL. If Kirk Cousins gets hurt, good night. I mean, and I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy. I don't think he's the top 10 quarterback. A lot of the Vikings diehards will try to make you think he is. Yeah, he puts up numbers and everything, and he throws touchdowns, limits interceptions, but he's not exactly a killer. You give him the ball on Thursday night against Dallas with 90 seconds to go down by 1. He's not going to win you the game. No goddamn way. He just never has proven able to do that. So we're sitting on thin ice right now. I mean, you're about to submerge into some icy cold water, and there isn't a water patrol nearby to save you. So I don't like their chances. 10-7 at best if they're healthy. If they're banged up, you're probably looking at a top 10 draft pick.
Well, and you got to avoid the clunker game too. I mean, look back under Mike Zimmer, there tends to be a clunker every year, losing late to a Colts team that wasn't very good, getting run off the field by a Buffalo team that wasn't what they are right now. Then you go back to last year, completely no showing against a bad Atlanta team. You have to avoid those things if you want to make the playoffs, especially at home. They got to have a stellar road record. Every year when the season was 16 games, I would always say, if you want to win your division or be a factor in the playoffs, you got to go 7-1, 8-0 at home. And then you got to go at least 4-4 on the road for me to take you seriously. You got to get to 11 or 12 wins. I think that still applies even in the 17 game schedule. One Gopher football question for you. Okay. I'm a Gopher football diehard. I have been for years, going back to the Jim Wacker days and Ryan Thelwell, Tutu Atwell.
Who's
Thomas
your favorite
Hamner,
player of all time?
Corey Sauter. Oh, great names. Top 10 great names.
Who's your favorite Gopher ever?
That's a great question. I was a big Thomas DePay guy.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I used to be obsessed with how much he could bench. It was always in the Star Tribune, like Thomas DePay. It was like in Sid Hartman's notes or something like that. He benches 460 pounds. I was just fascinated by that.
Remember his fallout with the Vikings too? He didn't disclose that he had an injury, and then they ended up cutting him. I was so excited when the Vikings signed him, and it lasted, I think, into training camp or maybe early into the season, and then they basically, I think he got cut for lying to them. Is basically what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Bateman, Tyler Johnson days were great, but just quick note: nothing beats Maroney Barber. That's the epicenter of Gopher football history for me. Maroney Barber, baby. That was so, and Tepe was right in that mix. So that was just the best days ever.
Yeah, and then Gary Russell, Amir Penix.
Gary Russell.
We could have a peak Gopher. We could have a peak Gopher football running back name off. And don't forget, go back to the late 90s, I think into 2000, maybe 2001, Ron Johnson at the University of Minnesota.
And Tellus Redmond. Yeah.
Tellus Redmond. How could I forget Tellus Redmond? Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's the question. Here's the question on the Gophers. 2019, the Gophers go 11-2. They finished the season ranked 18. They beat Auburn in the Outback Bowl. One of the greatest days in Gopher football history, because Wisconsin also lost the Rose Bowl that day. So Gophers win a nice bowl game. Wisconsin does what they do well. They lose a big time bowl game. But is that the best that the Gophers can do? Because from a recent historical perspective, Glenn Mason won 10 games, but it took a victory in the Sun Bowl to get there. Jerry Kill went to a New Year's Day Bowl, but they were only 8-4 that year. They got a little bit of luck. I think they were helped out by a Minnesota company being the sponsor of the Citrus Bowl that year. Tracy Claeys takes the team to the Holiday Bowl, in which they beat everybody that they should have, but lost in every toss-up game that year. And I want to believe the Gophers can still go higher. I think there were some encouraging signs against Ohio State, go back over a week ago now. But the evidence since 1967 would suggest that they really can't. Is it fair to expect that at some point the Gopher football team can appear in not even the college football playoff, but can they get to the Big Ten championship? Dream scenario, even this year. Can they? I don't think this. Can they play Ohio State later this year again?
This year, I don't know. I mean, that offensive line is really good, and I'm not even that concerned that Mo Ibrahim is down, because I do like the running back depth, but I'm more impressed by that offensive line overall. And I think it's kind of that Dallas Cowboys mindset. You can put anybody behind them, and they're going to run the ball well. I mean, running back by committee is going to work with this team. And they showed a lot more wide receiver talent than I had expected in that opening game. So, Daniel Jackson used to be a 4-star recruit. So I do think this team has the ability to be pretty good if they can limit some of those explosive plays. And they're not going to play a better team than they played in week 1. Ohio State does look like a national championship caliber team now that we've seen CJ Stroud can play a little bit. So I think there's definitely a chance this team threatens the Big Ten West this year and has a chance to maybe secure a spot in the Big Ten championship game. Iowa looks really good. They play Iowa State on Saturday. That's going to be massive, 10 versus 9. But I think if you can't really look at all the history going back to 1967 and even put it in the same category as what PJ Fleck has created and is afforded now. Because these new amenities, these new facilities, everything that the University of Minnesota has compared to the Metrodome days, you can't even compare it. This is what these athletes want. When they're recruited, they want to have a cool atmosphere. They want to have a good team with a player's coach, with a fun offense, and they want the amenities. We're just barely into this new $150 million football complex that the Gophers have. And they're showing it off year after year now, and you're seeing it. The recruiting is getting better. There's no question about it. I mean, PJ Fleck has still got his hands full competing against a lot of these other teams, but we always say it. Well, if Wisconsin can be good, or if Iowa can be good, why can't we be good? Well, we can. It's just a matter of now giving somebody the ammo in the gun to fire the right bullets. Because PJ Fleck was playing with a knife. I mean, all the coaches were playing with a knife and a gunfight for the longest time because the facilities were garbage. So now they have it. It's just a matter of time before they really put something special together. Now, if you lose PJ Fleck to like Miami or something in a couple of years, he's starting from scratch again. But I still think they have the foundational structure to really give themselves a shot to bring in the players they need to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, and you hit on the key thing. I mentioned this with Daniel House in a recent podcast. The next step for the Gopher football team to take that next step from being that cute little 7-5 to plucky 9-3 team, if you want to start winning the Big Ten West, and again, go back in the last 6-7 years, they've went into the final weekend with a chance to beat Wisconsin twice to go to the Big Ten title game and lost both times. So they've been close.
Yeah.
But it starts right there. PJ Fleck is 1-7 against Iowa and Wisconsin. You got to start winning, maybe not both every year, but you got to start getting to a point where you can reasonably expect they'll win at least one of those games. And that will help, I believe, ultimately ascend the program further. Okay, Joe, I'm going to do 5 filler questions with you. 5 filler questions is a bit where I just give you random questions, some sports related, some not. You can make your answers quick. You can make them long. It's entirely up to you. Sound fair to you?
Let's go.
Okay, cheap podcast open. 5 filler questions with Joe Nelson from Bring Me the News at Joe BMTN. And again, bringmethenews.com. Can you tell me, because I really can't, I didn't overlap a ton in my part-time work or internship work with Paul Allen. Can you tell me a Paul Allen story, having worked with him, that you feel comfortable you can share with the masses that they might enjoy?
That is a really good question.
Or just an anecdote. You don't have to like get him in trouble. Just what can you tell?
No, I will tell this story because we were both. This is actually sad, but it sticks out in my mind just because I always say this about the K-Fan guys, is that who they are on the air, they generally are off the air. They're generally the same people for good and bad. I mean,
yep,
let's be honest. We've got some definite, high caliber ego going on here, but they're all really good people. But my story about PA is, I'll go back to this. It was 2013, 2014. He was going through a divorce. I was going through a divorce. It was dark times. And it was all public information. He talked about it on the air, and all that stuff. But we would go into the Score 690 production studio, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, a couple of hours before 9 or noon started. And if I was in there before him on that morning, I'd be working on a montage or, just pulling sound bites or drafting some questions for the guests or picking out music, whatever it might be. And he would come in sometimes with his coffee and he would just sit down and he'd say, "Play me something sad." And so we'd fire up some sad music and just sit and wallow in our sorrows together. It was kind of fun. But no, it was, he was such a great guy. I mean, you got to remember back in the K-Fan days when I was there, I don't know what these guys make now, but the endorsement money's got to be really good to help support what are usually really bad salary contracts.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yep.
And I signed my first contract there in 2009-10 after the big crash. And my first year I was getting paid, the contract said $22,000. Year 2 was $24,000. That was my salary. Now I had health benefits and everything, but a week after I signed that contract, the boss man calls me into his office and he says, "Joe, you're going to see $1,000 on your next check because we're legally not paying you enough money." So I was like, yes. But on that note, back to PA, I mean, he was well aware that, I was so severely underpaid that he would always go out of his way because, when you're the host of those shows, you get a lot of perks like Mall of America gift cards and everything. And every year he would just toss me like a couple $100 of gift cards to the Mall of America and stuff like that, just to help me out, and it was, he's very kind and helping in that way.
That's an awesome and very heartwarming story. I can share a similar story when I was working at Salem Media Group in town. I won't name the host. There's no reason not to, but it was, or no reason to, but I was having a really funny kind of, frustrating day where he was getting mad at me for some stuff. And it was one of those classic things where I don't know why you're mad at me. I'm doing everything that I can do. These issues that are happening are not my issues. But finally, I just told him something along the lines of, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was $9. He's kind of going off on me, and I use our little inside ball talk. I use our talk back button. And I basically said, hey, I make $9 an hour. That's not enough to put up with what you're putting me through right now. He starts going off, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. Wait, they only pay you $9 an hour? I'm gonna talk to them after the show.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. I saw there was a tweet that went viral just yesterday. It was some journalism student saying, hey, somebody, if any journalists out there, media people, can you give me some advice? And I had to hold my tongue and not type, get the hell out of this industry as fast as you possibly can. It's like, you really gotta love it. I mean, and here's the thing. You never know when you're going into this industry how long you will be totally underpaid. It could, the likelihood is forever.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reality of it. I mean, that's just it.
It can be volatile too. It can be volatile.
Yeah. My advice to anybody getting into radio, TV, or journalism would be, it's not about the long hours or, missing holidays or having to work on weekends and late at night or whatever it might be. No. It's about the pay and never get a family because it's very difficult. Stay single and only pay for yourself because it's going to be a financial struggle if you start having kids.
And if you don't do it, if you ever get lucky enough, like I have been blessed a few times and will be again early next week, if you ever get lucky enough to get a quote unquote more office type job in the industry, don't even think about it. Take it.
Oh God, take it immediately. Those jobs last.
Take it.
And you're going back to Score North, I see.
Yes, correct? I will be working with pretty much all the podcast ventures in some way, shape, or form locally for Hubbard. So I'm looking forward to that. I
love it. And there's a future in that.
Yeah. The podcasting thing, it seems to be working out, seems to be doing good. So we'll ride that train and see what happens, but I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
For those kind words. Number 2 of 5 filler questions.
Yep.
I love this question. This was almost going to be question 1 or 5, but I buried it in the middle. What gets you more excited? A big Minnesota sports win or a big severe weather event?
Oh, it's not even close. It's severe weather. You got to remember, I'm the kid who, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I used to turn on, it was channel 17, TPT 17. Yes. It was the National Weather Service, like radar, and it was like a weather radio thing with a radar that would scroll through it. Well, you didn't have on-demand radars at the time, so it's like I would just wait for it to go through the motions, and it would be like the National Weather Service in the office of the Twin Cities has issued a severe thunderstorm watch for Meeker, Nan, Stearns, all these counties, and I would just sit there like a psycho all day long waiting for storms to develop, and then stare at the radar, which, as you know, develops very slowly and takes hours. So if a storm's firing in western Minnesota, you're waiting hours for it to develop and get to you. And usually it splits and misses where you're at exactly. That was back before I would actually get in my car and go to the storm, So I am 100% obsessed with weather. I mean, if I were any smarter and had the ability to do fractions or division and any kind of mathematics, I would 100% pursue some sort of meteorology situation in my life. But instead, I just look at the radar, read forecast discussions, let all the other people who are smart enough tell me what's going to happen, and then go find it. So I have a good understanding of it. Sometimes it pisses guys off like Ian Leonard that I write weather blogs, give you the news, but that's too goddamn bad.
And you know what? In today's day and age, Joe, there's enough room and space for everybody to have an opinion and share their beliefs. So
don't tell that to Ian Leonard.
So you be you be you. I fully endorse that. So I just had a 100 grand candy bar for the first time in a little while. It made me think it's just such an underrated candy bar. Do you have a candy bar that you believe is firmly trashed on, ripped on, or just underrated that you think the masses need to know about and enjoy?
Anytime I go on a drive by myself, I usually go to like a quick trip and stock up on beef jerky, candy, and chips, because that's my inner fatso that I just have to have it. And I'm 270. I got to drop a few. Let's be honest.
Oh
But,
yeah, me too. Me too. The COVID-19 literally became the COVID-19 for a lot of us.
I've had the 2010s just crushed me. It doesn't matter about COVID. But anyway, I absolutely think the white chocolate Twix bar is the greatest thing on the planet. I can eat that all day long, every day. I love white chocolate. So otherwise, that Hershey's cookies and cream bar, oh, it's so good.
The white chocolate Easter bunny that comes out that you can, there's always like the Dove milk
it's
chocolate.
It's got to be hollow, though. The hollow one is the good one. If it's the full solid one, no.
Well, it's tough to bite too. That's the problem with the full solid one.
That's true.
Question number 4 of 5 filler questions. Who would have made a better pro in the NHL? Adam Banks or Charlie Conway?
Oh, Adam Banks. The talent was there.
Yeah.
Charlie Conway was just, he was a youth star. I can't see his ceiling going much higher. Banks had the right coaching. He had the right, the family support, the right kind of gear. He had everything going for him.
He also, as you said, had the talent. Charlie Conway was more of just a guts and guile grit guy.
Yeah, he was a gritty player. Yeah, exactly.
Typically, you don't have much of a high ceiling in the NHL. There's more room for a guy like Adam Banks.
Yeah, Conway didn't have the speed.
Your final question. No, he didn't. He was always being tracked down. Did you ever notice his teammates always caught up to him when they were rollerblading?
Yeah.
He was always getting passed.
Yeah.
Even I think Goldberg was lapping him. What team, your final question. I have a team, I'll tell you, it's probably the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it might be the Detroit Lions. What team would offend you the most if they won a Super Bowl before the Vikings? Like, when would you just quit and say, okay, I can't even care about this team anymore because X team won the Super Bowl?
That's a good question.
For me, I think it's Jacksonville. I know they've been to 2 AFC championship games, but if that team that's routinely 3-13 beats the Vikings to winning a Super Bowl, I think I'll just quit. Like, I'll just be done.
Yeah. I would say it's either Buffalo or the Jets. The Jets are like the children of the poor in New York. And it's, they just never have a quarterback. They can play defense sometimes, but they're just not good. So if they were to all of a sudden surge up and well, you're talking about the history of the NFL here, so I guess they already have a championship with Joe
No, but that's okay. That's
to win one now before,
right.
The Jets will be up there, but Buffalo for sure. I mean, they're the only 4-peat loser. If they all of a sudden go out and get one and leave the Vikings as this only 4-time loser with no victories in a Super Bowl, that's a nightmare. But guess what? They've got a quarterback. They've got a wide receiver. They've got special teams. They got a kicker who can make kicks. They have a good defense. They're actually good. They might win the Super Bowl this year.
Well, it would be poetic justice for the Bills and Vikings to meet in the Super Bowl to decide who wins their first and who loses their fifth. And the final score would inevitably be like 5-3. Somebody would win on a Super Bowl, or would win
nothing on a field goal.
Yeah, they'd win on a safety, or the final score would be like 9-6. So,
if Buffalo fans are thinking that same thing, they better have some patience because it ain't going to happen this year.
Okay, so there's your grandiose Vikings prediction. They're not going to the Super Bowl. Joe Nelson from Bring Me the News, bringmethenews.com. Joe, ton of fun. I appreciate you doing this. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work, and just continue to have fun doing what you're doing, because it seems like you've really found something you enjoy, and I know it's working for you guys, and I'm appreciating the content. Other than that caller guy, I don't know what the heck you were thinking.
Oh my God, Matthew Collar's just like I don't know. He shouldn't be allowed to write.
Does he know anything about football?
I don't think he does. No.
I'm not convinced he does.
He's kind of dumb, isn't he?
Joe,
he lives in Richfield. He this is a call out to Collar. Still waiting for that 3-point contest invitation. Let's go. He's scared.
That's hashtag content. Film that and put it on the socials. Joe, a ton of fun. We'll do this again sometime down the road. Okay.
All right, man. Thanks, Ross. Have a good day.
That's Joe Nelson from Bring Me the News, bringmethenews.com, at Joe BMTN on the Twitter machine. And that's actually going to do it for edition number 73 of the soon to be award winning Minnesota Sports Chat. I'll be back again next week with a brand new podcast. I'm not even going to tease it because I will tease it. I got something big lined up more than likely, but it's not confirmed. So that's your tease. We'll be back again next week with more Minnesota Sports Chat. I'm Ross Brendel saying thanks for listening, and we'll talk again real soon.